All right, guys, Steve O'Connor. I'm back with you. I'm the Richard Cranium of reality. Listen, we're going to get in a little bit of this talk about the kid. I shouldn't say kid. He was an adult technically, but it always seems like a kid when it's somebody who's mentally ill. I think we look at them as never being grown up. But anyway, the kid that was shot in New York, and then MamCommie, that idiot communist who is thinking that he has to revamp everything and send out social workers instead of police. I'm going to comment on a lot of that stuff. As I've said in past videos, I'm a retired police officer, worked out here in California. I used to be in charge of the field training officer program at my department. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment on all from an expertise side of the police about, why this guy shot, what happened, what leads up to it. And of course, we'll critique other things along the way. Let's get into it.
Well, the NYPD today also releasing a 911 call that led cops to the home last month of a 22-year-old man in a mental health crisis. It happened in Queens. And last night they released, you saw it here, we showed you body camera video of an officer shooting that man after he refused to drop a knife. Well, today, Mayor Mamdani, I should say, pushing once again for a new Department of Community Safety in New York City. It would send social workers as the front line to mental health situations like this one. With the story, here's Eyewitness News report.
Okay, so let me pause right there and let's illuminate quite a few things. This is old news. This is something that has been bantered around for probably the last 20 years almost, about sending social workers instead of police officers to mentally ill people. Now, in the state of California, I'm sure it differs everywhere, but we have what was called Welfare and Institutions Code, which was 5150. Everybody in California kind of jokingly looks at it as a person being crazy. It's not crazy. It just means danger to self, danger to others, or gravely disabled. It is those three criteria, and it's any one of the three. It doesn't have to be all three. This situation qualifies under a mental health status problem under the 5150 code that we would use here in California. Again, every state's going to differ, but they have something similar. So just like the same as in California, in New York, they're going to send officers there, especially given the fact that this kid apparently had schizophrenia. And to say that you're going to send social workers to something so unpredictable as to need a mental health evaluation and then possibly a committal to a mental health hospital for further evaluation, that's something that's initially determined by officers. If they wanted to send social workers, they can go ahead and do so. But guess what the social workers will do, as they've done 1,000 times in the past when I worked on my department, is they're afraid and will not go to a home to check up on somebody that they think could possibly even be close to violent. Why? Because these people have gone off to college to get a degree in sociology and in all the working with special needs and all those kinds of things. This is their specialty. That's the area that they have specialized in. They don't have any of the training that police do. They're not fighters. They're not going there with weapons. They're not trying to cause further problems. They're actually going there to hopefully quell any problems that may exist. However, they have to first deem the area to be safe. They want to evaluate the subject that they're going to contact. So they used to do these things where we call it an AOD, assist other department, not a police department, which is commonly used for that term, but we would get a request from social services to go with them to a residence because they were afraid of the person they had to contact. In that case, as an officer, we usually stood back and let them do their thing. We just stood there for safety, just to make sure that nobody was harmed. We didn't want to get involved. If we don't have to, it's all the better for most cops. So despite what people think, they don't want to go there. And the last thing a police officer wants to do is end up shooting some guy who may have mental health problems. I'm going to go into a little more on that in a moment. Let's continue.
NJ Burkett.
How you doing?
The two officers arrive alone. The parents of 22-year-old Jabez Chuck Roberti told 911 that he was in emotional distress and needed medical attention.
I love the whole thing of arrived alone. Okay, well, if you send two officers, that's not alone. Now, on NYPD, I believe they have a lot of two-man units. A lot of departments are going to single-man units days. And then at nighttime, they have two-man units. I worked in one of the highest crime rate cities in the nation, and we went single unit all the time. But nevertheless, you're always going to have backup, and that's the reason another person goes there. Hopefully the purpose of two, when other people think of it sometimes as police officers showing up going, well, why are there so many officers? We didn't need that many. It's not meant to be a situation where we want to escalate or have problems. In fact, quite the opposite. An overwhelming show of presence deters other people from thinking of doing something that they otherwise would not do if there are a lot of people there. If there's a bunch of people there or a bunch of police officers there, then it might change their mind. They may not think of doing something either criminal or getting violent with the cops or thinking they can overtake one cop. They realize, I got to take two or three. That's not going to work out well for me. Okay. Now, next in line is, when we look at schizophrenia, and this is a very difficult situation, folks, for anybody out there. If you've never dealt with anybody with schizophrenia, it is a very dangerous mental disorder. Basically, it's a brain disorder, right? So, it changes how they think, how they feel, how they react. And oftentimes they can be incredibly volatile. They've lost touch with reality, most of these schizophrenic people. Up to 10% of all homicides committed in this country include a diagnosis of schizophrenia for the assailant that actually killed somebody. So stick that in your pipe, folks. For what you don't understand, there's a lot of volatility that goes into these situations. When these officers arrive, you got a kid who's going to pick up a knife, as you'll see. So watch this.
They are calmly invited into the vestibule.
Invited in.
Suddenly, Chuck Roberti grabs a large kitchen knife.
Papa, no! Hey, put the knife down!
The man's mother tries to calm him down. The officers plead with him to drop the knife.
Move!
One of the officers slams the door, but Chuck Roberti manages to pry it open, and as he does, the officer fires 4 shots.
Okay. Difficult with somebody who has schizophrenia, or he could have had a multitude of other mental disorders as well. We don't have his full, a list of medical problems that the guy has. That's usually kept private anyway, per HIPAA and all those things. However, when officers go there, we obviously understand that somebody has called us for a possible, and in California, again, it's a 72-hour mental health committal. However, you have to understand that that's up to the doctor. Oftentimes, doctors may release people in 3 to 4 hours. They get them balanced out with medication. They evaluate them. They think they're non-dangerous, and they kick them loose. Nevertheless, when the officers go there, they're walking into the complete unknown. And so they have to walk in there and make quick evaluations. Usually, they're going to use calm demeanor. Now, I'm not going to Monday night quarterback this cop to the end of the days here, but from a cop perspective, as a training officer, usually with the mental health people, you want to try and use more calm demeanor. You come into the house, he picked up a knife. I know that gets volatile quick, and every officer will react differently. Some are very calm in the face of adversity. Some of them react quickly and get very defensive. And this guy did, but they did a smart thing by trying to back away a little bit and close the door. Because normally, as I've stated in other videos before, as you folks well know, if you have a criminal situation, cops are not to retreat. It's actually stated in the penal code. It's been backed by law, constitutional law. We have no requirement to retreat from a volatile or dangerous situation. If we're going to take somebody into custody, then we can use that much force necessary to take a violent, combative, or resistive suspect into custody. That's the way it works. And that is completely on the part of the suspect being arrested. However, that said, when you have somebody of mental health, we try to use the utmost of kid gloves. Most guys do. They walk in there, they want to talk to the guy, evaluate things if they're calm. I had, over 1,000 5150s. It went calm as could be many times. The last but not least part here is if that guy was getting through the door, it's ironic that, or I shouldn't say ironic. It's sad that the officer had to shoot the guy. However, I might have thought one well-placed shot and reassess if time permits, if he drops the knife, if you have sufficient distance to warrant that. And by the way, folks, for a lot of you that don't know, a lot of cops, if they have their gun in their holster and you have an assailant with a knife, and they can even be 15 feet away from you, they can get to you and stab you 5 times before you could even get your gun out. That has been proven before in multiple tests. It's actually taught in the academy. We learn these things. Bear in mind, there's a lot of things that we know that the public does not, because we are faced with dangerous situations every day.
Roberti survived several bullet wounds and remains hospitalized tonight.
It's good that he survived.
His family says he is schizophrenic, and the presence of the officers likely made things worse.
I'm sure if someone is going through any mental health crisis and they see an officer with a gun pointing at them, that also is not necessarily going to de-escalate any situation that is happening.
In the 911.
This is where I'm going to pause here, because this is where we get into that genius right there, the idiot savant who thinks sitting there with that bone in her nose that she knows exactly how an officer should do his job, and that there's no way in the world that he should have a gun out. It's going to, you're trying to de-escalate. Well, just as I stated before, somebody can close the distance with a knife. If that kid would have run at that officer, within a second he could be there. And he's got, of course, a Michael Myers style Halloween, a knife from the kitchen. That kid stabs him with that. That could be instant death. It hits either an artery or a vital, or one of your main organs, gets in the heart, whatever goes into the guy's eye. We're officers. We want to go home to our families as well. We do not have a need to wait until we get hurt before we hurt someone else. Really get a grip on that and think about that, folks. Officers have no desire to go to a scene like that and shoot somebody. They don't. Despite what every bit of the liberal media thinks out there, they would rather it go calm and well. But that officer also realizes, I got a wife and kids at home, and I want to go home to them. And I want to go home to them in good shape, not in pieces. So I love the fact that this lady talks about that as if she's an expert, and she doesn't know shit of what she's talking about.
On one call, his mother asked for an EMS response and said he needed to be removed against his will.
Is he violent? No, not now. He just, he threw his fourth piece of glass. He's not hitting anybody. He just threw glass at, the wall. Is anyone injured? No. Any weapons? No.
Except the
Grandma
glass
Donnie
all over
has
the
made
ground.
it clear that police should respond to violent mental health episodes, but not necessarily this one.
They're calling for involuntary removal. They're saying that he's breaking glass. I mean, you would agree, right, that a police officer should be responding to that?
I think that the questions at the heart of our pursuit of the Department of Community Safety are looking to answer exactly what mental health crisis response should look like.
The confrontation took exactly 27 seconds.
So let's pause right here, too. There's Mom Donnie with more gobbledygook crap out of his mouth. My favorite is this guy is completely operating in the red. He's facing budget crises because he's such a shit idiot. And of course, he has no idea how to run a department because he's thinking in the socialist format that the government should just provide everything. Not really getting the fact that the government can only provide that which it didn't first tax and take from the people. So anyway, hopefully this guy's going to learn as he goes along, considering that he's 1 IQ point above cabbage in my book. But then he turns around and with no expertise whatsoever, no experience whatsoever with police officers, he thinks somehow, and get a grip of this, that he's going to create another aspect of the department where, more money by the way, people or social workers are going to go to volatile situations, potentially volatile situations with mental health people in crisis, and they're going to handle the situation better. So I would pose to that moron, if a mental health worker had gone there without police backup, she may have been dead after being stabbed numerous times. Maybe he would have reacted different to her. We don't know. However, when mental health oftentimes asks for police to go to a scene, guess what? We may have other emergency calls we're involved in. If we have a suspect in custody, we can't leave that guy. We're going to be with him for a few hours, going through processing, booking him, taking him off to county jail, all those kinds of things. Now, if you're at a larger department like New York, they have holding cells. They're not going to have to take that long usually, and they have it compartmentalized. But no, regardless of that factor, you still have to wait for officers to be available to come out. Coincide that with the fact that mental health services guaranteed in New York is probably overwhelmed. And they're only going to have so many people within their department. So when a call is made for them, things have to perfectly align for that social worker and the police to get to that place at the same time. And now, if you have that mom who's calling saying that he's volatile and she thinks he needs a mental health evaluation and she wants him removed, guess who's going to do that? It's usually the police. It's not going to be social workers. The moment they hear he's been violent, they're not going there until police get there. So now we can add to the cost of the police department and social services going to each scene. Good luck with that budget, Mom Donnie, you stupid ass.
And the officer initially chose to close the door, appearing to fire as a last resort. The family claims that Chakraborty remains in ICU, handcuffed at the wrists and ankles. They agree with the mayor that he should not be prosecuted. Still no comment from the Queens DA's office, which is conducting a thorough investigation tonight. At City Hall, and Jay Burkett, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
All right. So that's it there. Bottom line is, you guys saw all that. And with Mom Donnie, you have to think about a couple things here. And that, sorry, I'm just adjusting the picture a little bit better, but you have to think about a couple things here. And that is, he is talking as though he knows what he's talking about. And of course, he does not. It's a standard thing. Police have very difficult jobs. They have to make split-second decisions, that can oftentimes determine whether or not they're going to take somebody's life. That is a very sad situation. And it's incredibly difficult as dynamic situations or volatile situations rapidly unfold and an officer has to make a decision. Good or bad, he's got to live with it, and he also has to deal with the consequences of it. I assure you folks, for any of you out there that do not understand this, many of these cops have children. Many cops, exactly like myself, for example, I have a friend with a severely autistic child. He gets nude all the time. He's nonverbal. He's also been violent. He's hurt his mother. It is dangerous. It's difficult. And the biggest problem we have, you have to think about, is whether you're a cop or a social worker, when somebody gets violent, or let's say somebody releases violence upon yourself, the normal human proclivity or reaction is to defend oneself. And defense oftentimes means that you're going to stop the threat. That means you have to hurt the person who is your assailant. So what a touchy situation when you have to deal with somebody who is autistic or schizophrenic, anyone with mental health issues, because in the back of your mind as a police officer, what are you trying to do? Not hurt this person. You're trying to simply get him off for mental health services so you can move on to the next call you have to go to, or something more volatile that you're going to have to deal with, unfortunately. And you want to be able to go home to your family, and you want to help the family that you went there for. You have any idea how that officer probably feels having to shoot a kid when the family called him there for help? I assure you, people, you don't know how many police officers have had to go through tons of mental health crisis on their own after numerous years on the job. A lot of them suffer PTSD issues. A lot of them have become alcoholics. That's happened. It's not an easy job. When you have to put yourself in that situation, bear in mind that officer's not having a good day, especially after that situation happened. But it happened, and there's nothing that can be done about that. Okay, folks, that's it for me on that. I'm just going to remind you right now, too, I also am a certified sommelier. I have links at the bottom of my page. You can check out my website. I'm available to come do wine parties in people's homes if you so choose. I can do lessons. I can do impromptu stuff. I also have an ABC license. I sell wine. I will bring the wine to the party. It's always a good time. I've had a great amount of fun doing this. And then last but not least, of course, I would ask that everybody like, share, and subscribe. You know, YouTube follows those algorithms. Trying to get this more going and more going. Trying to get this going better, I should say. Sorry about that. I can't English today. So just trying to do better on the site, and I would appreciate that. All of you folks take care. All my best, and I'll see you on the next video, okay?